All right, then let's move on to our final one. This one I think is really intriguing in a lot of ways. Sturm Graz, Stefan, true to their name, produces a lot of good Stürmer, which is the German word for center forwards. In recent years, Mika Berit, right, who's since gone on to Monaco, who can represent, I think, 6 or 7 different countries. He's now representing Denmark. Rasmus Højlund, who first moved on to Italy and now is at Man United, and probably would be doing a lot better if he wasn't at Man United, but that's a different story. I still think, a very talented center forward. And now William Böving, another Dane, and again from Sturm Graz, moving on to Mainz, who have a Danish head coach, of course. Bo Henriksen doing a great job there. Narrowly missed out on Champions League football last year. And they're now signing William Böving from Sturm Graz. We actually have an interview up with William Böving. Our colleague Ewan Robertson did it with just before we did the Austrian market value update, where Böving went up to 8 million euros. It's only 22. I really like this player. I mean, Sturm Graz is such a fascinating club on its own, right? Because of the development that they have undergone there under 2 very different sets of managers. The way that they have basically dethroned Red Bull Salzburg not once but twice. Even though they had this massive turnover. Remember, Hoffenheim signed the entire sporting decision makers, everyone from down to I think one of the massage guys, right? And they still managed to dominate Austrian football last season. They do really, really good work there, and they do really good work developing strikers. And Böving looks like a really interesting profile of a player. And I think key for Mainz here, he is the Burkardt replacement. He is the player that they need to bring in, with Burkardt going to Eintracht Frankfurt to play Champions League football. And we discussed this on a previous podcast, and it's a move that makes sense for everyone involved, including Frankfurt. But they needed someone to come in and be ready to go. And he scored 11 goals and 8 assists for Sturm Graz last year. I love the signing. I think this is a signing that Bo Henriksen, if he can get the most out of, we're talking about a striker who in a couple of years will be a 25-30 million euro plus striker.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. He is the Burkardt replacement. They've obviously picked up Benedikt Hollerbach from Union Berlin for 10 million euros, and there would be temptation to suggest, okay, he's a forward as well. He's there to replace Burkardt, but I think he's a very different forward from Burkardt. I think Hollerbach's the guy who runs and runs and runs. He chases down defenders. Yeah. He pulls them out of position. He's the guy who just is so good off the ball. That's obviously why he did so well at Union Berlin. And I don't think he has the finesse and the technique, to be perfectly honest with you, to be a replacement for Burkardt. But I do think Boving is. And I think if you look at his stats, there's something really quite interesting about him. He excelled with his expected assists last season. He really outperformed his XG, actually. And that's kind of where he really kind of stands out from Hollerbach and looks very similar to Burkardt. The way he converted his shots last season for Sturm Graz was tremendous. Mm-hmm. He's obviously the far more kind of clinical striker, the goal scorer that Mainz obviously want to bring in to replace Burkardt. And, the interesting thing is, if you kind of look at where he's played for Sturm Graz in the Austrian Bundesliga, he has kind of played across that front line at times. He can drift out right, he can drift out left, he can play through the middle. Obviously prefers to play as a centre forward, but he's very kind of malleable, if you will. Again, like Burkardt, obviously he's always had that kind of technical ability to be this pure striker, but he's played really wherever Mainz has needed him over the years. Same with German Ash team more recently as well, and I'm sure for Frankfurt he'll kind of play all over the place as well for them next season. So, it seems like a really smart signing, Manu. And you're right, Ewan interviewed him. He's got a lot of ambition. He wants to play at the very highest level. Mm-hmm. Like so many of these young Danish players, actually. And, it's actually quite interesting. There is this kind of groundswell of Danish talent coming through right now, which I think is kind of flying under the radar in a sense because, and it's only something I noticed this week actually. We actually did a bit of a study on our own database of Transfermarkt. It's an article up on the website you can find. Again, Ewan did this actually, the guy who interviewed him. And what I found really interesting was it was basically looking at all the players in the database by nationality and their combined market values. And you had obviously the main guys at the top, like England, Brazil, France, Germany, etc. But two nations that were almost identical in terms of number of players on our database, i.e., number of players playing, senior major football, but also in terms of market value, were Denmark and Belgium. And I just don't think many people would equate the talent pool of Denmark to be almost identical to the talent pool of Belgium, because obviously Belgium's been known for developing so many outstanding players over the years. So I think that's a real compliment to Denmark, that they've got a lot of young players coming through who are, going toe-to-toe with Belgium's young players in terms of market value and things. And Boving's maybe just another perfect example of that in that sense, where, we're getting to this point now where having a Danish passport's maybe a kind of seal of approval for a lot of these young players. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. I hope he does well, Manu. I hope Mainz do well. They're a great club, and I'm glad they're doing a bit of kind of smart business to replace Burkardt, because God knows they'll need it.
I mean, it's not a huge shock with Denmark. You go back, and I mean, in the 90s when they won the European Championship, and everyone, like, the story behind that is always it was a surprise. But you look at that squad, I mean, that was a really good team. And, ever since then, they've always done really well in tournaments. It's a country of 5 million people,
Yeah.
So it's very impressive. They are kind of the Uruguay of Europe in that sense, in terms of just, despite a very small population, just churning out a massive amount of players. And it's probably because of a fantastic social welfare state and ensuring that the population is healthy and does a lot of sport and creates a lot of good athletes. It's not the only sport that they're very good in. They're also good in hockey, and they're also really good in handball. So yeah, there's something in the Danish social state that ensures great athletes. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't shock me, because you also look at the coaching, right? We have so many good Danish coaches out there as well. And if you have...
Well, funny you should say that, Manu, because you know who used to coach William Böving when he was at Copenhagen?
Bo Henriksen.
No, Jess Torup. Who unfortunately is no longer in the Bundesliga.
He'll be back.
Which I didn't think was very fair. But yeah, Jess Torup. And of course, Christian Eelser coached them last season at Sturm Graz. So German football knows all about him, it would seem, in that regard. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there's a Danish kind of invasion from the north, it would seem.
We always have a lot of Danes in the Bundesliga, right? Because it's just next door. And they do surprisingly, they learn German really quick, or have it in school, because it's like so interconnected. So it makes sense. Curious to see how he does. Looking forward to seeing him play for Mainz.